Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Climate Conversations. I'm Victoria Nannetti, your host for this week. We hope you enjoyed our interview last week about solar PV with Michelle Bird. For those of you who might not be familiar with our show, Climate Conversations is a podcast show about climate change and environmental consciousness. Today we will be speaking to Sunday Harrison, the founder and executive director of Green Thumbs, about urban gardening. Now, before we get started with our show, in regards to our last episode, me talking about my not so great academic success at school.
Right.
Guys, I actually did really well last week on my chemistry test.
Congratulations.
So I'm pretty proud of that.
Yes.
Are you proud of me, Jabin?
Yes, I am.
Say you're proud of me. Thank you. Okay, so let's get on with our show. So Sunday, what pronouns would you prefer us calling you by?
Oh, thanks for asking. I'm fine with she or they.
Okay.
You know what? Sometimes I like that you don't know Sunday is girl or boy, so I don't mind they.
Right.
It's really nice that space is opened up in terms of gender and identification. I really enjoy that. I like that. So I'm fine with she or they.
That's great. I go by she, her.
I'm Jabin. I go by she, her also.
Yes. So, all right, let's get started with our first question. So, Sunday, what is Green Thumbs?
Well, Green Thumbs is a community-based organization that partners with local schools here in Regent Park and also in Cabbagetown and St. Jamestown. And even in Jane Finch, we're starting a partnership. We partner with elementary age students on their school grounds to grow food and to learn about composting and soil and climate change and environmental topics in a really wholesome kind of holistic way. So our programs are good for kids' mental health, good for their physical health because they're getting some fresh veggies and such. And it's good for people to be close to nature, even if it's right smack dab in the middle of the city. So we grow some trees with the kids and trees from seed, and we have lots of different crops coming in all through the growing season. And we try to animate the space in the summertime. We have youth staff running programs for local kids and families through the summer. And that food that's coming out of the gardens in July and August is going into the community and making sure that
That's so great.
people who need food get food. And we also run a market stall at Cabbagetown Market, and youth staff get to learn how to talk about what they've grown with customers and think about farming maybe as a career. Farming is now a real old person's game. Most farms in Ontario are owned by people 55 years of age and older. It's very hard for young people to break into farming. Even when they get the land handed to them by their parents, they often don't want to stay, right? Because of so many stresses in farming. So we want to, promote it still an option, we still need to eat, right? We need to eat 3 times a day, and it unites us all. So we like to think about food and farming in a really, in a way that's fun for kids to learn about, even if you've never even been out on a farm, but you can get some sense of what it might be like by growing a school garden.
So what would you say led you starting to Green Thumbs?
Well, I just wanted my own kids. I started it as a parent because I wanted my own kids to have access to nature in the city and food growing. Because I had that when I was a kid, but I was worried. I was living in kind of RGI apartment and just worried that I wouldn't have those resources to offer my own children. So I went to Riverdale Farm and I said, could I start a children's program here? And they actually said yes, because at that time, the city was cutting back on programs that they were funding and running. And they said, if you can find the money to run the program, you can run the program. So I started Green Thumbs as an after-school program at Riverdale Farm. And there were kids from Regent Park coming up who'd never been to the farm, or were there like once a year or whatever. So they started coming once a week and getting to know the farm and getting to know the land and growing food. And so that's how we started. And that was back in 99. So yeah, some of those kids are older than you guys at this point.
Wow. I wish I had an after-school program like that I could go
Yeah.
to when I was younger.
Me too.
Like, I haven't really heard of Green Thumbs, like, until now.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think our school did do stuff like that. But, like, I love being around nature and stuff. And I feel like that experience would make me, like, let me have something to look forward to, like, after school.
Oh man, I wish you had known about it, but you can still come. We don't have an age limit. You can still come. But so we have tried to shift a little bit. Like, it's not really as much after school, although we do run like a youth after school program for high school age. But we haven't been running it through the COVID, just because of COVID.
Yeah.
But so we sort of switched to online programming with elementary age students during the school day. So we hope this year we can bring back the youth program because it's so cool. And then youth get an opportunity to apply for the summer jobs that we can hire them for. So it's kind of all part of a continuum of, learning about food and farming and then actually getting paid to do it. So that's part of the goal.
Like, Victoria, you know how, like, you were going back to, like, saying, like, oh, like, you wish you had that?
Yeah.
I remember, like, in middle school, we kind of, like, had that, but, like, it wasn't all, like, we didn't have all the, like, resources. It was just, like...
Yeah, we really didn't.
Yeah, it was just, like, in the balcony, and we just, like, seen, like little pots.
Yeah.
And we had, like, soil, and we tried, but, like, we didn't have the whole access to it. So it would have been great if we had something like that.
Wow. Where did you go to school?
Oh, we went to
Lord Dufferin.
Lord Dufferin.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah.
we actually had a program there for a couple of years, but they were weird with us. Like, they were like, every time you want to water the garden, there's a little corner, the northwest side of the school, there's a little corner, and we dug that up.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
I remember seeing that, yeah.
There for a couple of years, and then they were really weird with us. Like, they said you had to find a staff to water the garden. Like, we couldn't just get water when we needed water. We're like, no.
Oh, that's so weird.
But yeah, like, if you want a school garden, you have to be able to let us water.
Yeah.
We don't have time to go running through 3 floors trying to find a caretaker to let us turn on the water. Like, it's just like, no, that's not going to happen. So unfortunately, we had to kind of say no, but we did start there. Like, it's too bad it didn't continue, but there's a daycare right inside there, and the little kids could look out and see beautiful flowers, and it was really sweet. It was a really sweet spot. Anyways, to your topic, climate change, it's pretty tough to get your head around teaching that to young children, but the way I feel about it is that they're already hearing about it. So we might as well talk about it, and we might as well deal with the anxiety and deal with the sadness and deal with also what might be some good solutions. We can't promise that there's solutions because we don't know on what scale they would be rolled out. But what I like teaching about is the carbon cycle. Because, you hear, oh, carbon, well, there's too much carbon in the atmosphere. And it's in the form of CO2. But I mean, we're all carbon-based life forms here on this planet. So there's a carbon cycle. So I like to teach about the carbon cycle so we understand that carbon is the building block and CO2 is what plants take in and convert to sugars, simple sugars, in the process of photosynthesizing. So all of the life on the planet is to some extent dependent on plants. I mean, yeah, you could say oceans, but there's even like plants in the ocean. So they're taking in carbon dioxide and they're producing oxygen. So thank you. We get to breathe that. All the mammals get to breathe that oxygen. So there is a cycle. And what happens is when the plant is taking the CO2 in, it's actually, and this is the part that you might not have learned in school because it's pretty new science. What's happening in the root zone is that the plant is actually exuding, spitting out underground, sometimes up to half or more of the carbon that it's taking in, and it's producing it in the form of sugars into the root zone, and those sugars are feeding incredible biodiversity of microbial life in the soil.
Wow.
And so the plant is actually telling the soil microbes what it needs. I need nitrogen, or I need phosphorus, or I need calcium, or I need magnesium. And each organism of these microscopic organisms has a job to do. And they're doing their job in exchange for the sugar. They're eating that's their fuel, and then they're pooping it out, and that poop is somebody else's lunch. And there's a huge complex food web going on under the soil, and the plants are actually in charge. So the sun is really in charge because it's creating the liquid carbon essentially that's going into the soil to feed the microbes. So what's happened, and this is where we have some solutions we can look for, is that there used to be more carbon in the soil, and it was held in place, particularly by fungal organisms. And those fungal organisms help make the soil texture like very spongy, like they microaggregates and basically hold a lot more water. So one thing you have with the increased fungal biology is better soil texture. You also get more soil depth. And so the simple way to put it is a complex system, but the simple way to look at it is that the deeper the topsoil is, the healthier and deeper the topsoil is, the more carbon it sequesters. So basically the plants are bringing that down, they're exuding it into the soil is holding the carbon, right? That's where most of the carbon on the planet is held, aside from the oceans, which is also huge. But we're on the land and we're in a city, and so this is part of how we teach, right? So here's the soil as a basic carbon sink. But what's happened with agriculture is that they've started using chemicals. About after the Second World War, they developed agricultural chemicals that ended up taking the place of the microbes. So instead of telling the microbes what to do and the microbes running around and getting what the plant needed, the nutrients came in a bottle. And so they grew fast and it looked good.
Yeah.
But the message was to microbes, we don't need you anymore. And so the soil has become less and less deep and less full of carbon. So unfortunately, the chemical agriculture has really added to climate change. So one way we can really rebuild our soils is through composting. It also reduces food waste. You know that up to half, I mean, somewhere between a third and a half of all food produced is wasted, right? That's crazy. So composting is one way that we can reduce food waste, and it also creates high organic matter in our soils when we lay it down. So in our school gardens, we have a compost system that is taking the waste from the lunchroom and turning it into fresh soil for the next year's growth. So kids are learning the nutrient cycle. They're learning how to avoid chemicals in agriculture. And that we feel is a huge part of the climate solution.
So I have a question for you, Sunday.
Sure.
So we talked about the science behind plants, soil, and the importance. So actually, before I ask this question, I wanted to know about the chemicals. So are those chemicals like fertilizers?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
fertilizers.
it's the Haber-Bosch process, which basically
Okay.
relies on natural gas to produce nitrogen fertilizer.
I see.
So not only is it hurting the soil, it's also a fossil fuel product.
Oh
that we-
no.
right?
Yeah, we talked about fossil fuels and our first.
Right? So discontinuing
Yeah.
that product is a really, really key solution.
Right.
And composting would help kind of like rebuild that soil.
Yes, exactly. And not even just any composting, but composting that fosters a high proportion of fungal biomass. So we actually let it rest because the fungal hyphae start to spread and grow when the soil is not turned. So when you're looking at agriculture and how agriculture is practiced, there's something in regenerative agriculture called no-till. So what it means is that you don't turn the soil over, because when you turn the soil over, you're breaking the fungal biomass into smaller bits. And so it's not as effective in holding the carbon. So that's another practice that we can use to sequester more carbon, is no-till, and it's usually paired with cover cropping. So you'd lay down a crop, a heavy seeded crop of like a clover or a vetch or a rye or something that's going to keep roots in the soil. So that's the key, because remember, the roots are actually exuding the liquid carbon into the soil. So you want roots in the ground all the time. You don't want to have bare soil.
Right.
So that's another thing that we teach. And with all of those practices, they work at any scale. They work in your home garden or on a 2,000 acre farm.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's really good to know. Like I really didn't know about
the science like behind it.
That's very interesting.
New science too, like because of the microscope. And what we can learn by actually studying. And I love a particular scientist named Dr. Elaine Ingham. She started as a child. Her dad worked in a lab, and she would hang out, and dad would tell her, count the species that you can see in the microscope. So she started at like age 8, looking through a microscope and looking and learning what she was seeing. So she now runs an organization called the Soil Food Web School. And it's kind of expensive and it's not for everybody, but the science is there, and it's pretty accessible to anybody. Like go on her website, go search Soil Food Web, and you'll get kind of this newer science. It's not that new, but definitely it's really blossoming right now because of climate change, and because it does offer a really good way to keep more carbon in the ground. Doesn't mean we don't have to stop burning fossil fuels. We need alternatives like solar and wind energy and geothermal and all kinds of stuff that hasn't that could be ramped up right now. We need all of that. But at the same time, agriculture is considered one of the big carbon sources, but it could actually be a carbon sink.
So to make it even more personal than environmentalism, I imagine there's something almost therapeutic about growing your own plants.
Totally.
Could you speak on the mental health benefits of gardening?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's actually very well proven in literature. Like even people who have a view of green space outside their window when they're stuck indoors, if they're sick in a hospital or whatnot, even just the view gives them better health outcomes. So it says something about how hardwired we are to look at green spaces in nature. Do you know that green is the one color that we can see more shades of than any other color?
Really?
Really?
I did not
Wow.
know that.
Same.
And it's a survival. It's part of how we're constructed as survival, because we need to know one plant from another. Plants can look very similar, and one of them can give you the runs and the other can cure you of the runs. So you don't want to mess it up, right?
Yeah.
So, we are very closely connected with the plant world. We just don't think of it all the time because of how we buy our food and how we get our food. But really, it's all pretty much plant-based, except for the fish part. If you
Except for fish. Yeah.
except for fish and salt. You kind of need salt water to get salt. But everything else is like plants, trees, plants, trees. Serious, like they're so important to us as a species.
Right.
So it's no wonder that we are pretty much hardwired to feel better in nature. There's all kinds of reasons why people don't have access, and we know that communities where people are living on low incomes have less access to nature and poorer health outcomes. And that there's basically a health equity issue in terms of access to green space. So as part of our social justice work, I think we need to consider who has access and how can we increase access for people who don't have enough. And that could just be on their school ground. That's part of my motivation is like, you know what, your school ground doesn't need to be a boring bunch of turf with a few lollipop trees.
Yeah.
You can have a biodiverse food forest on your school
That
ground.
would be so great.
Right? It doesn't have to be huge. It just, for kids, especially little kids, the smallest space can be magical. And one of the activities that we might do in a program is like ask a class of, pretty much the little guys to just go and find a magic spot in the garden and just, look at everything that's there. And if it's just grass and a few trees, there's nothing to, it's just not that interesting. You'd rather run around and play tag or hide and go seek, which is also fine. But what about all of the plants that we could get to know, and the birds and the insects and the worms and the bugs? You know what? It's actually kind of embarrassing how excited little kids might get from a worm, because they just haven't seen it. They haven't been close to see that. And so, you're just kind of like, it's almost too easy to entertain them with nature, it should.
The thing is, when I was younger, I was like a bug fanatic. I loved bugs so much. Seriously, every time at recess, I would I think there was like a lizard or something.
And then there's butterflies.
We'd have at school. Everybody, the teacher or the students in that class would come up to me. They'd be like, "Oh, Victoria, could you help us find some worms or little bugs for the lizard to help feed their lizard?" So yeah, I really liked bugs and just getting my hands dirty.
Yeah.
Anything to do with nature.
Yeah.
No, that's so true. And there's a word for it. It's called biophilia.
Biophilia.
And children are naturally biophilic. Most of them, it's hard to find. Obviously, now we have screens and we have computers and we have technology, and so it captures their attention. But it doesn't take much to actually see how kids love living things, animals,
Honestly.
plants, bugs, and so we're building on that biophilia and, learning about sustainability. And what does sustainability mean? It doesn't mean things all staying the same, because that's not going to work. We need to move into a new era of more respect for nature, instead of assuming that we can just take. We have to give back, and we have to have more gratitude, and we have to leave the fossil fuels in the ground. Right. And it's not going to be easy, because we've built a lot of our lives on fossil fuels. It's so nice to drive somewhere, but we're going to have to find other ways. We're going to have electric vehicles and more mass transit and more bicycles. Even electric bicycles. I'm thinking I might get an electric bicycle, because today is not the day you want to be cycling.
Mm-hmm.
It's so messy
That's
out
true.
there.
Yep.
But we have mass transit
We
policy decision.
Tree chat.
I think
For
we
our
would all
city needs to take climate crisis very seriously
Mhm.
and invest. I would think free transit might be a really good policy decision.
Tree chat.
I think
for
we
our
would all
city,
love that.
right? We have bike lanes. It's really good. Like, those bike lanes are there because cyclists advocated for them, and they didn't stop. They kept going until they got more bike lanes. So we have to do the same around climate change. We have to advocate for what we need and make sure that the city is a livable place, because
Mhm.
do you know there's only, they say, 3 days worth of food in the city at one time? So if something went haywire, can you imagine? So not that that's why we're growing gardens, because I'm not going to feed the city from a school garden, but when you talk to people who've been in war type of situations where their city has been under siege, urban agriculture actually did mean something to them. Like they actually
Mhm.
were able to eat because of urban agriculture.
I think that's really
So
important.
I'm not trying to say we need to, uh, you know, dig up all the soccer fields, but
Right.
it just doesn't hurt to get more skilled at growing food in the city.
No, totally.
Even in your balcony, or even in small spaces, like just to have a little bit of something that is nutritious and fun. There's nothing like growing your own food just for fun. Like I grew pumpkins this year, and then I made pumpkin pie, and I was so proud of my pumpkin pies. They were so delicious. But I think it was mostly because I grew the pumpkins.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think like growing your own food
And then just like having
would
fun with
definitely give you such a great like sense of accomplishment.
it. Yeah.
I would love to like grow my own food.
Mhm.
Seriously. But like I don't really know how.
Come out to our school gardens and
Of course,
yes.
of course.
I had a quick question. How does the green thumbs continue during the winter?
Right.
That's a good question. We've been running online programs, and we have a kit that we send out to all the kids. And
Okay,
so,
cool.
yeah, so they grow pea shoots, which is a microgreen.
Oh,
Very
right.
tasty thing. You can grow it in a cup. So basically they draw on the cup, they draw a face on the cup or whatever they want. Then they plant their pea shoots, and in a week to 10 days, they grow to the edible stage. And then we get back on the call with them, back on the Zoom call with them, and we talk about mindful eating, and we talk about nutrition, healthy food. And then after that program, they're going to cut and eat their pea shoots, and then they're going to grow again. There's such a wonderful
yeah.
food that they give you another flush after the first one. So that's a lot of fun. That's a very popular program, and we just run it online with the supplies delivered. Or if they pick them up, it's even better. And then the other one is called Trees from Seed. And so students actually are growing the Kentucky coffee tree, which is a native tree that's actually endangered. And they're actually learning how to plant a seed. It's a very big seed, and they have to sand it down to get the seed coat off, and then soak it overnight, and then plant it. And then they have their own little tree growing in the classroom or at home. And we're going to look for places to plant those trees out in the community. So those are our two most popular winter programs. And we also have a worm bin program. So if you're interested in composting and worms, you can do it in your classroom.
Wow.
And the worms will eat like some of the food scraps that come from your snack, like an apple core
Yeah.
or banana peel and things like that. Did you ever have that in school, worm bin?
I don't think so.
I don't think we have. Yeah.
But I
like,
love the coffee one.
oh,
I drink iced coffee almost every day.
an infinite supply of coffee
Yeah.
beans.
Yeah, the winter program.
I think a lot of teens would love that.
Yeah.
No, seriously, it's fun, and you learn about like the science of composting. I think it should be, it could be in any classroom, but especially even like high school biology is so interesting, especially if you have a microscope or access to a microscope, and you can actually see the biodiversity in the soil life in the worm bin. Because worms are eating bacteria, and they're eating all of the microorganisms that are on the planet or go through the body of a worm, come out the other end. And what comes out the other end is really healthy soil for your plants. So if you have indoor plants or you have a garden or whatever you have, you add a little bit of that vermicompost. And it's a very good product. It's actually being sold now, like in the home hardware and everything. Like it's like definitely has like a place in the market. I would always prefer to make my own because it's not been sitting in a plastic bag for, however long. But, it's the same idea, and it is a healthy product, and it's way better than buying chemicals to do the same job, right? So it gives the plants that extra little bit of whatever it is they might be needing. So yeah, so that's a program that we offer as well in the winter. And I have a little greenhouse across the street here that I use, where it doesn't have to be that warm, but as long as the worms don't freeze, because they don't survive freezing. But as long as we can keep it above freezing, we can be raising the worms across the street. So that's fun too. And then you're just planning for the season, because you've got to seed orders and garden planning, and we use a software so we can plan in advance where things are going to go, and we're actually pretty busy.
Well, thank you for this amazing interview, Sunday.
Yes.
I love Green Thumbs, your mission. I really wish I could experience more of that, like connecting with nature when I was like younger and stuff.
It's never too late.
Like it is not. Maybe I'll go home today, buy some seeds for the summer.
How can someone register for Green Thumbs?
Yes, how can somebody register?
So our website is probably the best overview, and it's greenthumbsto.org. And then all of our social media is Green Thumbs TO. And so that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Well, there you go, everybody.
Yeah, and then if you're a teacher and you want to book a program, you email us at programs@greenthumbsto.org.
Remember that, teachers. All right, so thank you so much for coming on to our show this week, Sunday.
Thanks for having me. It was really great.
I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you. You too.
Weekend.
And long weekend.
Woo. Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
See you next week.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out all of our social media platforms. For more information, check out our website.